From the entrepreneur's desk
to the industry front lines
and into real-world operations.
I'm Aaron Cardell, joined by Kyle Hunter and Jake Hamilton, and we're here to take the pulse of real estate technology in just 20 minutes.
Welcome back to PropTech Pulse. Very excited to have my friend Phil Price on with us today. So Phil brings a unique perspective as a CFO and COO of a large brokerage, independent brokerage in Central Florida, Tampa area. Phil, tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump in.
So I kind of stumbled into the real estate industry. I started in public accounting for about 7 years, many of those years with KPMG. Was recruited to be the CFO of a pool franchisor and pool manufacturer, chemical manufacturer. Got to a point where I wanted something different and met my CEO, Bob Glasser, who brought me on to be his CFO. And I would say over the 8 years as the CFO of Smith & Associates Real Estate, I've certainly added hats to my repertoire. You know, I started with finance, accounting, HR, dabbled in a lot of the processes that we do here at Smith & Associates Real Estate. At some point, we decided that I would run the title company and the insurance joint venture. I think sometime before that, we threw technology onto my plate. So really just drinking from the fire hose for the past 8 years of learning real estate and operating a real estate brokerage, title company, insurance joint venture, and trying to keep us moving and growing in the Tampa Bay market.
Yeah, good deal. And you know, I was lucky enough to meet Phil. I think it was maybe at a gathering of Eagles, some years back or something.
It had to be because I know we were at 2020 Inman together right before COVID picked up, and we were in New York like when.
Oh yeah, no.
COVID, and we were there for the Lone Wolf Customer Advisory Board.
That's right.
2020
yeah.
Inman. And so it had to be before that because I knew we knew each other then. Must have been like 2018, 2019 gathering of the Eagles.
Yeah, I think, 2018 something. And we happened to both be alumnus from Florida State University. So we kind of hit it off. And, Phil brings, as a CFO and, additionally coming from outside of real estate, it's a different perspective. And learning real estate, is tricky. It's a different animal than, a pool company or KPMG where you're kind of doing a little different things. And so you've been very interested in kind of following how you've moved just well beyond the CFO role because it's a very, belly to belly person industry. And you really, embody that in, the things that you do. So I've enjoyed, kind of watching you and following you and help Smith & Associates grow to kind of what they are today and take over that market. Which kind of leads me to first thing we want to discuss. And, as an independent brokerage and a consolidating market, how are you navigating that? I know a company like yourself, without naming names, I'm sure you've been approached by a lot of different areas to try to, come on board, whether it's a franchisor or acquisition or whatever. And how do you navigate that market and continue to, keep that sustained strong brand, in a market like Tampa?
Well, I think it starts with the brand and ultimately the leadership behind the brand. Our CEO, Bob Glasser, has been running Smith & Associates Real Estate since early 90s. And the company has existed, I think we're going on our 55th year. And it's a cool story. It was founded by a lady by the name of Mary Smith Conover, whose family owned a bunch of real estate in Tampa Bay. And it was really a women-led company. She founded it, brought on a bunch of her friends to sell real estate and selling the family real estate. But, I think as the markets consolidate and us independents are out here, it's really pouring back into our associate base. You joked about me being an accountant, and I always joke that I would go into accounting, but I'm a people person, so I get to compete against non-people people. So I think for me, it's been, and the team, just pouring into our associate base. We always say that we don't really care how many agents we have. we just want the most professional agents in the market, and we want our roster to look that way. One of the things we always look at is units per agent and volume per agent to know that we're the most productive agency in Tampa Bay. And then it's really our leadership team, from our managing brokers, from top down, the CEO. It's a family company. All of our CEO's children either have worked or work in the company, and it's his legacy and it's what he wants for the company. And he looks at the associates as his family. When we have been approached, his tone is always, I can't do that to my agents. And it's like, he cares so deeply about the human aspect of the business that, that's what we do. We tell our staff, if an agent needs something, you drop what you're doing, because if the agents aren't here, we're not here. So I think that's been our success, is really investing in people, both staff and agents, and building a culture that understands all the support we can give the agents, all the community involvement and things of that nature. Tampa Bay, Central Florida, it's a loyal local mindset. So I think we operate in a market that's a little bit different than maybe in New York, Chicago, LA. So that's definitely been something that I think has helped us maintain our strength in a consolidating market.
Yeah, and you hit on it. Your customers are your agents. Sure, the buyers and sellers are our customers as well. But the reality is, as a brokerage, as a company that's running a day in, day out business, you need to make sure the needs of your agents are met, and the culture is provided that they can fit and thrive in. It's all about making sure that they're there. I do want to touch on something. You're in primarily the luxury market, or you're more on the higher end, or how are you shaking out these days?
We always say luxury is a service set. We sell houses at all different price points. And we support agents that serve all different price points, and they're all incredible. I will, candidly, our average selling price is about $1 million. We do serve many of the high-rise condos that go up in Tampa Bay, exclusive listing agent for those. So we have a luxury presence. Our market share over $1 million in the Hillsborough and Pinellas counties is very significant compared to any competitors. And it certainly does drive the business. And also, it drives our mindset in the sense that everything we do, whether it's marketing, service, financial decisions, technology, brand, everything we do is luxury. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a price point. I think it's a culture that we've driven from a production standpoint and from a professionalism standpoint that we anchor to. Yeah, I know. There's different needs, and obviously there's a lot of competitive pressures that can come in that market. Obviously, there's big names out there, and to really grow and thrive and be the top independent in that segment is something to be very proud of, and to really maintain that pressure. Switching gears a little bit, as a CFO, you mentioned that you took over technology, and you're in charge of really understanding what helps all aspects of your company be competitive, stay competitive. But from a technology and back office operations, I know that obviously you need to know and have data to make decisions, because the markets are changing. You have to be agile, and tell me a little bit about what goes into that. How much of a factor that is within your day-to-day operations. Well, I think if you think back office, we're talking really transaction management and back office accounting, right? So, our intent is to put a staff member at every point where an agent is doing something administrative where they could be out building relationships and selling. I mean, one of our value propositions is support. And what we do on that side of things is we support it with the best solutions and humans to take that agent position on managing the administrative. From the financial data perspective, I guess I look at the needs twofold. Internally, we want to capture the data as much as we can, all financial information, and utilize that to analyze the market, ourselves, and where we can grow and get better. On the other hand, for the agent, we really want to make sure we're capturing clean, leverageable data for them to use in their business and stay top of mind and keep their sphere close. I think sometimes I joke that it's not really the back office and the transaction management that matters. It's what you can bolt onto it and do for your agents with that data that you're capturing, because those are your data backbones, right? Like, we ran into a situation back in the day, but like when I first got here, all the buyer addresses were all the seller addresses were the address they were selling. And all the buyer addresses were the addresses they were buying. And we're like, well, we want to know where they're coming and we want to know where the sellers are going. So we kind of coached our team to capture that information in a better way. So we also did that with the NAR changes. There's certain data points that were no longer leverageable through certain aspects that we had. So we started capturing everything into our back office system so that we could export that and analyze the market, not just ourselves, and understand from a practicality perspective what's going on in the market. And that's kind of something that has really helped us over the past 6 to 9 months, responding to the changes in the market.
Yeah, no, and I know that's, there's always changes, but there's been a lot of changes in the last couple of years, and a lot of needs. I saw some interesting stats the other day and talked to some folks about just some of the changes in, buying side commissions, and the fact that in many cases, in many markets, they've actually gone up. And so that was very contrary to what was predicted, when the judgment came down 817 last year. And I think that it really shows that, number one, there was some education going on, but also, things kind of stay the same, but you have to know how to address that, and you got to know what's going on using the data. So
and that was our big thing is let's capture everything we can so we know what's going on in the market, not just ourselves.
Yeah. As an independent, as a company like yourself, and obviously we're not going to talk commission rates, but commission schedules and how agents are paid and transaction, a lot of that goes into recruiting and retention. What is your role with Smith? Like, do you play any part of that on your side of the fence as far as, strategies and recruiting and retaining agents?
I think we've looked in the past 9 to 12 months, we've looked at every financial metric that we can think of to look at to strategize. And absolutely, I think between our managing brokers, our CEO, and myself, we're meeting quarterly to review those figures and determine what kind of changes or really just tweaks to do. Because I think the trouble with it is you can try to figure it out so much that you create complexities that actually create friction for the agent. And generally speaking, most brokerages' compensation structures or split structures, they are what they are. The company runs as it is. Unless you're making a big business change or like changing your value proposition, you kind of are what you are. But I do think that you have to stay on top of those things to make sure you're competitive in the market. Your value proposition is meeting what you're setting up for your associates. And then, from a recruiting perspective, you've got to make sure that you're competitive in the market. But we really feel strongly that our value proposition lines up really well with how we have it set up. I don't think that, I don't know that we'll stay exactly the same in the next 3 to 5 years of how we do it, but we feel really confident in it right now. But we are always evaluating it.
Yeah. No, I know it's used to be always the mouse trap, that you create, and there's so many changes and ebbs and flows. You got to keep it growing, but having that backbone and having something that can retain and make sure that everything is done properly is super critical to a company. What do you have, like 200, 300 agents now? How many agents do you have?
Yeah, we're at about 300. We've done a really good job recruiting to our value proposition over the last 12 months. I think we've really had some big wins with major agents in the market. And it's fun because our structure is a little bit different than your average brokerage out there. But I think once the agents get in and feel the culture and the support and how we do things, I think it's really well received. And, it really goes back to, if the associates aren't here, we're not here. So anything they need, we're going to try to solve for them.
Well, it's a testament to your, to your success and growth for sure. We're going to pivot a little bit. You mentioned that you explored title, and I know just from knowing you that, you've started to get into some of these other things, integrated models, some M&A considerations. I'd love to understand, your thoughts on where that's going, and having ancillary businesses. Is that a core piece to your business, and how does that fit in to, kind of your, what you guys are doing there?
I think it's definitely a core piece. I'll touch on the M&A first. I don't think we're selling anytime soon, so I don't really have any considerations there.
What about the other side, buying?
So that's where I feel like we're really positioned well. But you also have to find the right brokerages and the right fit. Like, compensation models need to be consistent. There needs to be a culture of collaboration. I had an agent joke with me who came over that she made sure her door was locked every time she left the office at her previous brokerage. She wouldn't think in a million years to close her door at Smith & Associates. So we're kind of picky. We want, and we're definitely interested, if you're listening out there, we're definitely interested in acquiring brokerages in our footprint, and ones that really fit Smith & Associates real estate from a culture and behavioral perspective. And we know that the compensation structure has to be a little bit similar, because those big changes when you're acquiring brokerages, I don't think they tend to work. On the core service side of things, we do look at it as a major point of our business. That's, Bob always tells me that's my role, and that's where I sit, is in the core services. I tend to gravitate throughout, but the title company, we want to make sure that our capture, in Florida, the seller pays for title. So we want to make sure that our listing capture rate from the brokerage is as high as it can be. We want to make sure on the insurance side, we're capturing as many buyers that flow through that we can be. And then recently, my team has done a wonderful job of building relationships with outside agents, which we thought might be challenging, but thankful to the kind of the agnostic branding, we've been able to bring on a lot of external agents to the title company. And I think the reason that is you brought up Smith & Associates Real Estate being a luxury brokerage. And again, we don't really think of that as a price point. We think of that as a service set. Well, throughout all of our entities, that's the same way we go about it. I want to win on service, and relationships every single time. So I think that's ingrained from the top down with our CEO, through me, into our teams. And it's been successful, and we're going to continue to push and grow those entities, and along with Smith & Associates Real Estate. So.
Good deal. Well, I know you, appreciate you being a customer of our back office and several other solutions in Lone Wolf, but I'd love to understand and this is kind of, I guess, closing, what technology changes do you think are going to matter in the future to kind of maintain, your ability to stay competitive when, we obviously hear about these large consolidations and these, technology real estate companies and these things. as an independent, like how are you, what are your thoughts about feeling of staying competitive in that kind of, market pressure?
Well, I think as an independent brokerage, I don't think we think of technology as our major value proposition, but you have to be competitive and you have to be at least on par with everyone else. I think for us, we are currently with our vendor solutions, and we have some great vendor partners like Lone Wolf that are forward thinking and development heavy and always improving. And that's what we want in every technology partner, is someone that's thinking ahead and pushing their own boundaries. I think we're going to have to see where AI goes. I almost feel weird talking about it, but I think the things that you can use AI to do from an administrative perspective, from a nuts and bolts perspective, to take work off of the agents, take work off of the staff. I always tell my staff, if you make something super efficient, we'll find something else for you to do that's more relationship heavy and but more cultural. We don't need you pushing the paperwork. Like we're not going to change our staff count. We care for our people so deeply. Our CEO has really ingrained into me that everything is about people and humanity. And so I think anything you can do to get more efficient, to allow the agents to be in the market, knowing the market, building the relationships, and selling the homes, as well as your staff not so buried in the day-to-day work, but also pushing your culture, supporting your associates, having a more personal role, I think is helpful. And that's where we'll drive with technology, is to create those, structural foundations for our brokerage.
Yeah. Well, I love that answer. I mean, instead of replace, you're repurposing and, keeping that humanity in there. And so, Phil, I really appreciate the time today. Thank you. And look forward to continuing to seeing the success with Smith & Associates.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
That's our Pulse for today.
Keep innovating.
Keep implementing.
And keep moving real estate forward.